What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Podium Pushers podcast with Justin and Brandon. Usually, I would sit here and talk about who knows what as a bit of an intro, but the first race of the season already kicked off some insane drama. We had a wet to dry to wet race, a crash before it even started. Lando Norris now leads the Drivers' World Championship for the first time ever. The Australian Grand Prix is in the books. We're here to react to it. Brandon, how you feeling after that first race?
That was incredible. I mean, we couldn't have asked for a better season opener. By far the best season opener that I've ever witnessed. Literally had everything in it. So it was crazy.
Yeah, this is what happens when we move the season opener back to Australia where it belongs. We would never see that kind of race at Bahrain. Having said that, it did rain during preseason testing, so maybe we were destined to have a wet first race wherever we were. I watched like half the race Saturday night, the rest of it Sunday morning before church. What was your viewing experience for the Australian Grand Prix this year?
It was very similar. I fell asleep watching it on Saturday night. And then I woke up on Sunday morning and finished the rest of the race.
Yeah, I mean, that was the way to do it, especially for us. It started at 11, so not super late, but then we had the delayed start, and I was like, I'll see a little bit of it. And then, of course, I went to bed, like, kind of in the one part that wasn't super interesting. Like, I literally went to sleep at, like, lap 30, and then, like, lap 32 is when all the craziness kicked off. And so I got to wake up and see that. That was good at least. Let's not waste any more time. If you're new around here, we've got a certain way we react to things. We're gonna kick it off with our one sentence rundown. So, Brandon, what is your one sentence rundown of the 2025 Australian Grand Prix?
My one sentence rundown is I think that 2025 is going to be the best season of Formula One that we've witnessed in recent history. I guess that's less about the race and more about the season. But I mean, I think the cars are incredibly close. You have teams taking risks in this season to go all in, win a championship. And I think, if this is anything, um, you know, looking into the rest of the season, if this is anything like how 2025 is going to be, it's going to be incredible.
Yeah,
So
well, I have no idea how close the cars actually are. Like, this wasn't a good litmus test for that at all. Like, obviously, on Saturday, well, qualifying, which was like Friday for us, we saw McLaren take a 1-2. It was pretty convincing. Obviously, they needed their second runs to do it. We're seeing some of the ghosts of McLaren past making some mistakes in Q3, but then they pulled it all together, and so they looked pretty quick in the dry. And then at the end of the race, we see Oscar Piastri throw it away, and Max Verstappen finishes under a second from Lando Norris. So maybe the cars are close, or maybe Max Verstappen is just such a freaking goat that he can keep up with Lando Norris. I don't know. But either way, after one race, it looks pretty promising for a good year.
yeah, I think it's going to be great. And, um, I just think with qualifying and how well Max did, and how poorly Liam did. I know that's not necessarily what we're talking about right now, but I think that was very eye-opening to watch to see, okay, how is the Red Bull in terms of difficulty to drive? I think they've got it fully on the Max Verstappen setup, and hopefully they'll tweak it to make it easier for Liam to drive. Obviously, he doesn't have that much experience, and he's not quite the driver that Max is, but I still do think that Red Bull is difficult to drive, but we'll see how the rest of the season goes for him.
It's been fully on the Max Verstappen setup since like 2019. 2025 is not the start of that trend. And I'm not going to judge Liam Lawson yet because Australia is such a unique track. He missed FP3 for no fault of his own. And then, very tough conditions for what is like his 11th race in Formula One and his first race in that Red Bull. So I'm not going to judge him yet, but not a great start. Close enough. Welcome back, Sergio Perez. I don't know what to say. I mean, that's just all it is. You know what I'm saying? My one sentence rundown is we've picked up right where we left off. And this is very similar to yours. Just the fact that 2024 ended in such an incredible way and got us so hyped for 2025. We spent the entire offseason hyping up this season, and the season opener in Australia did not disappoint. We had crazy weather, which felt like we had all 2024. We had multiple teams that could have won. We had Ferrari blunders. I mean, everything that made 2024 great at the end of the year just felt like it was in this race and makes me so excited for the rest of the year.
Yeah, a lot to talk about. I won't get into the Ferrari blunders just yet, but it was crazy.
Well, then let's just go ahead and move to our first question, which we'll talk about the Ferrari blunders some. And it's the perfect first question to start the year. Is the championship back on? McLaren are clearly the fastest package. Somehow they almost threw it away on Saturday. Oscar threw his second place away. So Red Bull and Max Verstappen have a chance to take a P2. Max almost won that race somehow. Ferrari looked horrible all weekend long. Obviously, they went for a wet setup and kind of threw away their qualifying and then threw away the race as well. The communication between drivers and engineers all weekend long for Ferrari sounded horrible. Mercedes, kind of the dark horse of the weekend. I don't think any of us expected them to finish as well as they did. P3, P4, solid recovery from Kimi Antonelli, George Russell, quiet podium. So really, it's kind of anyone's game if you look at it. McLaren do look like the favorites, but how are we feeling when it comes to the championship after round one?
Well, I mean, after round one, the only acceptable answer is yes, the championship. Both championships are still on. You have Mercedes and McLaren leading the Constructors' Championship, which is crazy. And I think if errors continue to happen, Max is going to be in it. I don't think that Red Bull is slow by any means, especially at the hands of Max Verstappen. And Mercedes, we saw in the middle of the season last year, their consistency was really what kind of brought them into the fight for a little bit, and then they trailed off at the end of the year. But if they can continue to be consistent, incredible day from Kimi Antonelli, to keep the car out of the wall and to just finish the race is, it was a difficult feat this weekend,
It was
but great
close. He
drive from
spun it
Kimi.
once, but he didn't hit anything. It was close.
That's true. That's true. But yeah, if Mercedes can continue to be consistent, it's really anybody's race. I think Ferrari will get better with time, and Lewis is still learning the car, learning how to communicate with his engineers. Um, and I don't think that car is slow either. I think they took a gamble and it didn't work out for them, both on Saturday and Sunday. So it's unfortunate, but Ferrari will, I think, still be successful this season.
Yeah, I mean, just because we saw Ferrari finish, I think like P8 and P10 is what it was. I'm not gonna write them off. If they did the strategy different or things turn out, they're P4 and P6, and they're right there, like 7 points off the Constructors' Championship lead. So Ferrari is gonna be fine. Don't worry about that. It wasn't on my bingo card to see Lance Stroll, Nico Hulkenberg, and Alex Albon all have more points than Lewis Hamilton after round one, but that's where we're sitting right now. And I think if anything, I think we can all agree that that Red Bull is not the fastest car. It's very difficult to drive. They probably won't be fighting for the Constructors' Championship this year. That's probably due to their driver lineup and the difficulty of that car. And they've kind of said that's fine. With Sergio Perez there, they've clearly said we care more about the Drivers' Championship than the Constructors' Championship, and that is Red Bull's point of view on it. I think that might be a slight advantage for Max Verstappen. We look at these, especially the McLaren drivers of Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris. They were very close all weekend long. They are surely going to be taking points off of each other all year long. You'll have some rounds where Oscar's the head driver. You have some rounds where Lando's the lead driver. They're going to be taking points off each other for the entire season. Max Verstappen, God bless Liam Lawson, is not going to have a teammate that's taking points off him like ever. And so Max Verstappen is always going to be getting the maximum result that that car can get. And that might be important for Max Verstappen when we get to round 21, 22, and we start looking at if this drivers' championship is still up in the air.
Yeah, and I mean, Red Bull obviously cares a lot about Max Verstappen, and they've gone all in on him. And it might be easier for them at this point in the regulations to go all in on how to optimize the car for Max Verstappen as opposed to how to optimize the car in general and get a driver lineup in there that will bring in a constructors championship. I think they're aware of the fact that the constructors championship would be a more difficult battle for them to fight right now. And so I think they're putting all their eggs in, the Max Verstappen basket, which is a pretty good basket to put them in, if you ask me. And I think that's what they're focused on. And, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that probably bodes well for 2026 for them if they're able to kind of just optimize the 2025 car for Max, see how well he can do, maybe win a fifth drivers championship in a row, and then hopefully hit the ground running with the new regulations in 2026.
Yeah, I mean, you have to imagine that they're looking ahead to 2026 already, especially with Adrian Newey gone. You would imagine that they're going to be putting as much effort as they can into that car and saying, yeah, Max will figure it out in 2025. We'll be fine. But this is a perfect transition to our second question, which is Liam Lawson already under pressure? Knocked out in Q1, DNF during the Grand Prix because he decided to put it in the wall. He looked pretty far off Max all weekend long. I got to be honest with you, there were a couple times I kind of forgot Liam Lawson was even participating this weekend. And of course, who can forget Yuki Tsunoda, P5 in qualifying? So is Liam Lawson already feeling the heat under his seat a little bit?
I mean, from my perspective, no. I think what you said earlier was we can't judge Liam off of this one race. It's a unique track. It was really, really tough conditions. He missed FP3 for something that what completely was not his fault. I mean, he hasn't even had that much running time in the car. Right now, Liam has more experience in the Red Bull than Yuki does, probably. So I think Liam's probably not feeling the pressure yet, but if he strings together 3 or 4 weekends like this in a row to start the season, then I think we start talking about it. We start seeing maybe rumors of a swap happening. But you know, I don't know. We haven't seen much from any of those three drivers, Liam, Yuki, or Isaac yet. So I think Liam has a little bit longer of a leash than one race, but we'll see what happens. You never know with Red Bull. You never know in Formula One.
Yeah, well, we saw half a formation lap with Isaac Hadjar, but we'll talk about that later. You know when you're like lighting a stove and it's a gas stove and it's like tick 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 and then it lights? Right now we're in like the ticking phase for Liam Lawson. There's no flame, it's not lit, but we twisted the knob a little bit. It's there. There's no flame, there's no heat, but surely if you're in Red Bull and in Formula One in general, you're kind of looking at that seat saying he didn't help his case for him getting a full season in that car. And Yuki Tsunoda had a great weekend. Was kind of thrown away by RB strategists, but that's their signature too. I don't know if you just live in Italy as a team, you decide to make horrible strategy decisions. That's just the way it goes. I'm of the firm opinion that if Yuki was in that Red Bull, he probably doesn't qualify P5. And I'm not saying that the Racing Bulls is a better car, but just the way that that Red Bull looks, I don't think Yuki Tsunoda would have qualified P5 if he was in that car. I mean, he's probably better off being in that Racing Bull than he actually was being than he would be if he was in that Red Bull.
Yeah, I mean, I think Yuki's been consistently the last maybe season or so has been able to get a lot out of that car. He's finally kind of hit his stride, and I think that's showing right now. And I do think that car is maybe a little bit faster than we thought it was after testing. Um, but I mean, I kind of agree with you. I don't know where Yuki would have been if he was in the Red Bull.
Yeah, so maybe it's best for Yuki to stay in that seat. And then we know that Honda's kind of told him he's on his own to get a seat for 2026. Obviously, the Aston Martin rumors are still going to be there. So maybe it's best for him to keep outperforming this midfield car rather than actually being in that Red Bull for the year.
That's true. I mean, you look at where outperforming midfield car got drivers like Alex Albon, Pierre Gasly, and that kind of thing, and they're still in the sport, and hopefully that'll be the case for Yuki as well.
Yeah, we'll have to see if Yuki's another driver cast aside by the Red Bull Driver Academy that can somehow salvage his Formula One career. We've got to talk about the rookies because this was a crazy first weekend for them. Isaac Hadjar bended on the formation lap. Jack Doohan made it about 4 corners. Bortoleto crashed halfway through the race. Ollie Behrman finished the race, but crashed twice in practice, did not look great, and kind of had a rough weekend. The only rookie who really shone on debut was Kimi Antonelli, finishing P4. He did get knocked out in Q1, but great comeback, put some good moves, especially that pass he had on Alex Albon. So right now, Kimi Antonelli, clear top rookie. Everybody else, kind of a rough weekend.
Yeah, Kimmy's definitely at the front of the Rookie of the Year race right now. We'll see how the rest of the season goes, but yeah, I mean, for me, it wasn't surprising to see so many of them crash because, again, like we said, it's a unique track. It's a very challenging track technically in very tough to predict conditions in, cars that they don't necessarily have a lot of experience in. So it's not surprising to me that literally 4 of them crashed out of the race. Um, but it was unfortunate to see.
Yeah, whenever you're seeing Fernando Alonso put it in the wall, you know it's a tough day for driving for sure. I think we've talking about how hard this track was. Obviously, they made some changes this year. Specifically, they changed turn six, where we saw that George Russell Fernando Alonso incident last year. A lot of drivers complaining about that. How if someone went through the gravel, there would be gravel on track. Fernando Alonso says that's why he crashed, is that there was so much gravel on track that he broke traction on that. Does do we need to move away from gravel traps? We want to see drivers punished for mistakes, but then when you see it on track and disrupting actual racing, does something else need to be done to that turn moving forward?
I mean, I think that's definitely something to look at. I think Australia has more gravel than a lot of other tracks do. I think in other tracks where we see gravel traps, it's the purpose of slowing the cars down enough so there's not a really bad impact into the wall. And turn six in Australia is kind of a unique turn on the calendar because I think that gravel is a lot closer to the track than other gravel traps are. So I don't know. It's also a really high speed corner. You want something there that will help minimize the damage, and keep the driver safe as much as possible. But I think it's definitely something to look at, not necessarily something that I have a lot of insight into, but I think it's definitely something to be considered.
Yeah, just give me like a 2 meter wide strip of AstroTurf. So if a driver just dips a wheel off, he's punished. It's going to ruin his lap, but you're not putting gravel out. And then if a driver actually makes a mistake, goes off, we still have that gravel trap. But just give me like a little bit of a buffer. And obviously, it is still preferable to just having a asphalt runoff. Like I want drivers to be punished for mistakes, but just move the gravel a little bit away from the track so we don't have to worry about that. We have to talk about Williams before we move on to our predictions. How could we not? What a surprise. Are Williams the best team in the midfield right now? Double Q3 appearance. P5 for Alex Albon. It was P4 for a second, but P5 is still an incredible points haul for him. You have to assume better times are ahead for Carlos Sainz. They've kind of gone back and forth on if it was a car issue. They say he had too much revs after an upshift. We will never know really the full story behind that. I'm not an engineer, but is unfortunate to see him put it in the wall under safety car. But then James Vowles said that he was making strategy calls for him, so Carlos Sainz still has to be applauded for the P5. I didn't expect this from Williams. They look great all year, all weekend long. They look good in the rain, which is not something we expected. Are Williams best of the rest right now?
I mean, they look like it. So I would say yes. They are seem to be operationally doing the best they've done in probably since I've been watching Formula One. I think James Vallis has really come in and turned the team around. Carlos Sainz, we know he is a great driver. We've always known that. We've always known that had a fantastic attitude. Um, and I think that's showing. It was really, really unfortunate to see him put it in a wall. I think had that not happened, it definitely would have been a double points finish for Williams, which would have been great. But it's unfortunate. It's all right. I definitely think that better things are ahead for Carlos this season. But right now, Williams looks like they're the best of the rest, maybe even better than Aston Martin.
Oh, for sure, better than Aston Martin. It's not even close. And honestly, massive shout out to Alex Albon. All of us went into the season, both of us, and pretty much 99% of the Formula One fandom was expecting Carlos Sainz to absolutely smack Alex Albon around, and then for him to beat Carlos in the first qualifying and then finish P5 in the race. That's a great way to kick off the season when you've got such a highly respected teammate like Carlos Sainz.
Yep, absolutely. Huge shout out to Alex Albon. I think everybody was thinking he was kind of a slouch, but not in Australia. He wasn't.
Not a slouch down under. And unlike last year, his chassis is leaving the race in one piece. So good for him. Let's talk about our predictions that we made. Obviously, the score is 0-0 at the moment, but not for long. Podium pusher of the weekend. I went with Williams. I'm going to argue yes for this. You can't tell me, even though Carlos Sainz crashed, a double Q3 for Williams and a P5 for Williams. I mean, that's the best weekend they've had in like half a decade. So, for sure, in my opinion, I should get the point for that.
Yeah, I can't argue against that. We just talked about how great of a weekend it was for them. So I think absolutely you get the point. It was a great weekend for them. Even though Carlos crashed out, I mean, I think that's a small blemish on what was a fantastic weekend for them and what looks like will be a great season for them. So I think absolutely.
Let's go. I was worried about it. I thought I was going to have to fight harder. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I went with Lando Norris. I'm gonna go with definitely yes on this one. It was a great drive from Lando. Max nearly beat him, but Lando was able to hold him off. Good strategy calls from McLaren to give Lando the opportunity, and he really took advantage of it. So I think it was a great weekend.
Yeah, pole, win, and leading the championship. Can't complain about that. Back marker of the weekend, I went with Jack Doohan. Got off to a great start, beat Pierre Gasly in a couple practice sessions, and then gets knocked out in Q2 and then doesn't even complete the first lap. So I'm going to say yes for that as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it was kind of a rough weekend for Jack, unfortunately. Um, but it was looking good on Friday or Thursday
Yeah.
night for us. So I went with Ollie Behrman, and I think that's a definite yes. I think there was maybe a lot of pressure on Ollie for the first time in his Formula One career. And it was a tough track, tough conditions. He did finish the race, but I believe he was in P14, which was the last of the drivers to cross the finish line. But crashed out twice in practice sessions, qualified P20, so not a great performance from Ollie. Yeah.
Yeah, well, didn't even get to take place in qualifying because he had that gearbox issue. So it was just a tough weekend all around for him. Look at us, 4 for 4 on backmarker and podium pusher of the weekend, getting off to a hot start for the year. This is where it all comes crashing down. Pole, I said Charles Leclerc, which did not happen.
And I went with Charles as well. Did not happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's just unfortunate. Like, what were we thinking predicting Ferrari to do anything right in the first race of the year with a new car? Like, that was the dumbest thing we could have done. So that's no points for us right there. Podium P3. Oh, man, it looked like we were off to such a great start. I thought this was going to happen for sure. Max Verstappen finished P2, didn't get the point for that.
And I had Charles in P3. He obviously finished P8, so not even close on that one.
Yeah, I had Charles in P2, so even further away from me and no point there.
And I had Oscar in P2, which was looking fantastic right up until lap like 45 or whatever that was, where he decided to spin a little bit. But honestly, great determination from Oscar to get back on the track, finish the race, still scored a couple points. I think that is some resilience that we haven't seen from Oscar Piastri yet. So that was awesome to see.
And I don't even know if we can fully blame him for that. There is just some Australian curse in the air. Any Australian driver, it looks like they're doing well. It just doesn't work out for him. So I know it was his fault, but part of me is like, nah, nothing he could have done. It just was destined to happen. First place, I went with Lando Norris. Easy pick, easy point.
Same here, Lando Norris, 1 point for me.
All right, 1 point for each of us out of our podium. Still looking fairly good. My one push and prediction, I said that none of the rookies outqualified their teammates on debut, which was looking great until Nico Hulkenberg decided to get outqualified by his rookie teammate. So no point for me on that one.
Yeah, and I said that 7 different teams would be represented in Q3, and that happened. So 1 point for me.
Good job for you. Good job for you. That means you're leading 4-3 at the moment. Your first lead in the prediction championship. You and Lando Norris both taking your first lead. How you feeling?
Feels fantastic. I know exactly how Lando feels right now, so it's
Both
awesome.
championships are of equal importance. The Podium Pusher predictions and Formula One Drivers World Championship, equal importance. The fans at PVK underscore 96 underscore says Max Verstappen wins. That did not happen. At Aussie Speedster says double McLaren podium incoming. That did not happen either. And at David underscore 9162 said Yuki Tsunoda would outqualify Liam Lawson. That did happen. So one
It
for three
happened.
from the fans. Good predictions there. That is all we have got for our Australian Grand Prix recap. Before we get out of here, Brandon, what are your parting podium thoughts?
Man, I'm excited. We've got China this weekend already, so that's super exciting. Can't wait. China's a great track. Had a good race here last year. It's a sprint weekend. 2025 is off and running, and I'm pumped about it.
Yeah, not long to wait until Formula One cars are back on track, and we will be back later in the week to predict the Chinese Grand Prix. So make sure you stick around for that. As always, thank you for watching or listening to the Podium Pushers podcast. It means the world that you let us talk to you guys about Formula One. If you haven't already, be sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment, do all of the things before you get on with your day. You can find us on all of the social media platforms. We appreciate each and every one of you. Truly, it means the world to us that we get to talk to you about Formula One. We will see you later in the week to predict the Chinese Grand Prix. But until then, have a great day and God bless.
See ya.